Are you hitting the button?
Yes, we are live. Brian's talking, and we are live for episode 3. Welcome, guys. This is Tech 4-3, episode 3. As you can see by our description and title of this video, vacations. That was a thing for me, and that was a thing for Brian. So please excuse us for the time off. Brian's not any more tan because he can't get more tan.
True story.
So that's an issue. Appreciate you guys stopping in. We're going to cover a lot of stuff this week. We missed the Samsung Unpacked event, so we're going to cover the Note 9. I'll go through some stuff with that. We'll get Eddie and Brian's opinion on those because that's a huge thing for what's biggest for Sammy right now. Got some Pixel stuff, got some Tesla stuff because Eddie's in the building and that's how that works. But basically, we're going to have a little bit of a roundtable like we normally do. Hopefully, we'll get out of here quicker than we normally do. So I'm going to start off with the Note 9 because we're all just bombarded with that information online right now. I've read many things. We're looking at a lavender and blue from what I've seen. I've seen black floating around somewhere. I don't know if that's a certain country or whatever. 4,000 milliamp battery. I'm all about that, especially after my Note 7 melted. And then they had to back off of that on the Note 8. So we're all, I think, super excited about getting a decent noteworthy battery at this point. I'm going to look at you, Eddie, because the biggest cachet to the Samsung Unpacked event was that you can sit your phone on a shelf and take a picture with the pen. So that was real life. The one big thing that I'm actually excited about is the fact that functionality is open source. So it's the APK is open to be able to be used by third-party applications. So those options are like unlimited at this point. I assumed we would see it just for like Samsung apps or the stock apps in the phone, but apparently it's an open APK. So we're going to be able to see that maybe the functionality of that actually progress going forward. So I'm kind of excited about that. That was a big deal for me. I mean, I get you can change tracks on music without the phone being next to you and things like that. But yeah, I can take a selfie. So I'm excited about that. 6.4 inch display, Snapdragon 845. Brian's favorite part, 128 gigabyte, 6 gigabytes of RAM, $999.
I mean, that's cheaper than we thought. So,
what
did we say? $1,200 potential starting price. So,
yeah, you're right.
I mean, that's not bad.
The 512 gigabyte version, which 8 gigabytes of RAM from what I read. Tell me if I'm wrong. Both of which I think are super not necessary for your everyday life. The expanded memory, you can expand the memory up to 512 to begin with. So I mean, it's like just get your terabyte or close to your terabyte out of a memory card with 128 and save $250. $1,250 for that, Brian. I know you're super excited about that.
Like I said, that's where we thought it was going to start. So
that makes you feel better?
I do feel a little bit better. You know, I think we're going to see what Eddie was saying last time, you know, where they're going to run trade-in promotions and everything, and trade in your good old Note 5 for $200 off of the full retail price and all that stuff. I think
BT dubs. I checked my trade-in value for my Pixel XL, $50. I looked. It's not fun. So if anybody wants to buy a Pixel XL OG, it's for sale. Hit me up. The water carbon cooling thermal aspect of the Note, which I think was in tandem with Fortnite because of the gaming aspect. Was that a thing prior, Eddie? Do you know? Like in the prior phones? Do we know what their cooling system was prior?
It was all very but I think it's still passive, but it was a passive system before heat sinks. I don't know. Like when one finally gets cracked open, that'll tell what the fancy name is actually referring to. I don't think that it's going to be. I think it's just a fancier name for a slightly different way of engineering it so that they can, pull the heat away from the chip.
I like fancy. I'm a fancy kind of guy. So I'll take it.
I feel like there's a certain amount of risk if you're actually water cooling a cell phone.
Right. Like I've seen that sort of stuff with PCs where they're having all that sort of stuff, but that's all.
Yeah, I mean that's a normal thing
Yeah.
to put water cooling in, but I'm curious to see when someone rips one of those $1,000 phones apart.
$1,250.
Yeah, how that works.
No one's ripping apart a 512.
iFixit will do it, and they'll see what that really is. Because I don't imagine there's a pump inside. I don't imagine there's anything. It's just got to be some setup of a heat sink with maybe some type of liquid, but it just as a conductive fluid, like just as a way to pull the heat away. I don't think that there's any moving parts inside. I wouldn't imagine, because that would just be that's just a point of failure as far as.
It's like wrapping the battery terminals around the side of a phone to point where the phone melts. Like that's an issue. The dual speakers, which I think was an additive from the last one by AKG, which is nice. Dual optical image stabilization on both cameras, which I'm always a fan of. They added the S9 Plus dual aperture, motorized aperture, so it can function at 1.5 versus 2.4, which I think me and you even sat there and saw if it actually changed on the S9 Plus in Pro mode. So I mean, it's you're getting S9 and S9 Plus features with an S Pen at this point. The biggest I think I saw, which was covered, which I think most people were, I don't want to say talking down, but saying they were going to shut off, was the AI part of the camera, where it's going to tell you if somebody's eyes were shut, or, oh, you're taking a picture of food, we're going to turn up the saturation to kind of help with what it's supposed to look like. Like most people that are serious about taking pictures are shutting this off because they want to color correct the way they want to. I think. Or is the average person buying this phone and loving that? Is the average person paying $1,000 or $1,250 or $1,000?
I mean, I'm sure they will if you're really into, the Note. I feel like the Note series has never been the end all be all for the market. It's always been a niche product to begin with. So you're going to have those people that are super loyal to their Notes that are going to want to keep upgrading to it. I mean, the photo thing is a bit weird, but they've always done stuff like that with their cameras. They've always tried to work in some sort of new, and I don't want to say gimmick because I'm sure someone will find it useful, but it's a gimmicky thing that they put in their camera again. So my shocked face is this.
Make that an emoji, please.
Yes. Depends
it's
on
the one with the straight line mouth. That's me.
It depends if it's enabled by default, as far as so the people that aren't going to fiddle with their settings are just going to pick up the camera and use it, and if that feature turns out that they take better pictures that way. But in real life, there's a gap there. There's a generational gap, because you look at the generation of Snapchat and Facebookers, are they even using the stock camera? A lot of those instances, it's
filters,
the actual apps camera that they're using, for Instagram and as far as I can tell, those features are part of the stock camera app, not whether not an Instagram or a Snapchat
because
feature.
That was the issue with Snapchat on Android, was that it was using a screenshot of the camera or of the app when it took the picture, instead of actually having access to the camera.
Right.
So I guess you're right. I mean, it's not actually using the camera. So is it actually getting, besides just natively taking photos, are you actually getting any of that
who's going
AI functionality?
The people that are taking pictures of food and places like that, they may not even see the benefit, because they're not even using the camera app, so to speak. They're actually using
or whatever.
They're using the application, and as far as I know, those aren't it's not like an open API system where you can just get that and implement it into your app. And then would Snapchat or Facebook or anyone even do that, for that matter? Would they even spend the time doing that whenever they're working on their own stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
one phone.
Right.
Snapchat has been a hot mess on Android since day one. So it just kind of is what it is. Excuse me. Speaking of, I guess with software, it's shipping with 8.1 Oreo, which some people were upset about, considering we just saw Pi released, but Pi was released after obviously they were done building this phone and getting ready to release it.
The beta version of Pi was released in like March, though, so they had plenty of time to work with it to get that ready. That's just straight up.
And it's going to get Pi when? Next year. Next December.
It's straight up ignorant as far as what.
It's ignorant. It's not ignorant. It's ignorant.
I'm curious. I'm going to do a little Google search here. We're going to see when if they have announced when.
They do usually will do a list of like dates when they're looking at trying to release those, and then they do obviously do the list of saturation for what version of Android is being used on how many devices. But while he's looking that up, I also saw. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Yeah, okay, they fixed the fingerprint scanner location, but it's still super high on a super tall phone, which makes it kind of tough to even. It's still better than the last scenario, but it's still a little bit tough to reach." And then the whole pen thing, because people were worried about it. Like it has a battery. It apparently charges within a minute of being back in the phone. I'm sure the battery's super tiny in it anyways, but
it's 30 minutes. They said on stage that it would last 30 minutes. So that's also of questionable usefulness as far as like they should have PowerPoint presentation. I don't know that I would bank on my S Pen being my tool for controlling my PowerPoint presentation when I've got a 30-minute time limit, and then you just end up having to put the pen down and do something else anyway. Yeah. But that's a feature for a watch. Like that's if you're going to do something remote, that's like a phone, the actual phone, or like a one of the watches.
And they talked about that as well. I saw that they had released the newer watch, or they would announce the new watch.
Yeah, it's same time. The Bluetooth ones come out at the same time, and so does like T-Mobile, I think. Then for that matter, would have to be AT&T as well, with the Verizon and Sprint models to come later, whatever later is.
Shocker. And then they did, obviously, as Eddie correctly told us, that the DeX feature was going to be just cable related. You no longer had to have the dock for it. Yeah, it's still a super niche type of thing though. Like it feels half baked as far as what kind of functionality DeX is going to give us, or what we're going to get done with it. I don't know if they almost feels like they're pushing it like they're pushing Bixby, which still makes you want to vomit. But I think they changed the button. The Bixby button is not remappable on the Note 9, from what I understand.
It is not.
And you hit it 1,500 times a day if you just hold on to the phone. So that's awesome too. I enjoy that. I mean, those are the specs. I mean, we understand what that is and what it's supposed to be. I like the updates as far as the internals go. I can appreciate that. I'm sure we can all appreciate that. And I think that the Samsung experience, or formerly known as TouchWiz, is a lot better than it used to be back in the day. I have a tough. I just don't. It's not as much of a want for me as it used to be. I'm actually looking at smaller devices at this point because that phone literally won't fit in any of my pants.
You're skinny jeans.
Yes, I do not wear skinny jeans. It's tough because I'm that dude. I am that Note guy. And it's just tough that it's not what it was, to a point where I can be like, I need this device, because I mean, I use the heck out of the S Pen for work all the time, for notes and for any sort of thing I needed to jot down. And they were there, and it was in my hand at all times. The headphone jack, yes, you kept it. I'm excited about it. It's expandable storage. I'm more looking at the S9, the actual smaller S9, just because of pocketability and the fact that you're not you're giving up dual aperture camera and stuff like that, and bigger battery. But I don't know that it's as big of a deal for me as it used to be, because I waited for it every two years.
I mean, I think if I'm buying I'm going to throw out an old school term. If I'm buying a phablet,
nice, very nice.
I'm waiting to see what the Pixel 3 XL looks like first before I go and drop $1,000 on a phone.
It's going to be close. That phone's going to be right up there too.
Because you're probably going to get roughly the same screen size, and you're not going to have a weird pen.
So the consensus that I got online with the videos that I watched was that if you're going to pay $999 for a phone, this is the one you're going to pay $1,000 for because of the features and the functionality. It's the only one that packs enough stuff into it that it can warrant $1,000 price tag. I think I agree with that. I don't have an issue stating that. I just don't know if those features give me what I'm looking for at this point. Maybe it's me changing what I need, which is fine. I mean, we can all adjust what we actually want in the device. But if you're going to pay $1,000 for a phone, this is the phone you should buy. I can't tell you to buy the phone that I literally have on the desk right now. I mean, if you're gonna pay $1,000 for a phone, this has enough to almost warrant $1,000.
Now it has it now.
Yeah.
Whenever it still has Oreo 6 months from now, and all the new features come out, and it's just, I don't trust their updates. Like, I just don't.
There's
had too many.
Nothing on the Google about a timeline either. So, glean from that what you will, because it's not even like they made an announcement like, yeah, we'll get it in the coming months. Which is 6 to 8 months. And Samsung
purchased Samsungs for years, and it was just, whenever I was seeing awesome new features on, at that time it was Nexus, like, when you would see these great cool new features and things were just moving along, it was just nothing. It's still they're still stuck like a version and a half behind. And there's no excuses now. Like, Project Treble is out. So Project Treble is the hardware abstraction where you can update at a very specific level, and it doesn't affect the lower levels before that, so that you can still keep your core and just get the new features added on, and nothing. Like, it's just, a dirt poor little essential phone company can come out with an update the exact same day.
They're running basics. They're running stock Android, so they can do that.
Right. But Treble allows them to do that. It allows them to skip over, like, Samsung can still keep their high level stuff and just get the core updated. And it's just, I'm seeing that it's not.
So tell me if I'm wrong. If they were to be able to be quicker with a software update to the newer versions of Android, whether it's an incremental upgrade or a full aesthetic upgrade, would the Samsung experience not get as janky a year in or 2 years in if they were consistent with software updates? That's still going to help the skin, considering there's a lot of optimization going on there.
It would just help from a development standpoint. I mean, if you're a developer and you're a little guy and you're just like, okay, I've got so many resources and so much money. I have a limited amount of this stuff. I look at iOS and I said, oh crap, I can hit 6 generations of device with minimal effort. And then you come to the Android side and you say, okay, so what phones are selling a ton? Samsung selling a ton, Google starting to get in there, your Motorola is in there, and they all are featuring different. There's just a cornucopia of different versions of Android. Some are on, Oreo 8.1, some are on Oreo 8.0, some of them aren't even there yet. Like, your little company with your limited resources. What are you going to do? You can only, optimize your application for so many things. And it doesn't help that one of the biggest manufacturers like Samsung, if you just go across, even take half of iOS's 6 years, like take 3 years of Samsung's, you go, S6, S7, Well, let's do S7, S8, and S9.
Good job.
They're on 3 completely different operating systems across the board. None of them are on the same version. I don't know how you can. It messes with the app developers themselves. Like that's why you get things like Snapchat, where it's, your core experience is just a disaster.
It's been a hot mess, and it's probably, and I didn't think about it as far as the back end goes, like you're talking about. So I get that end. You're not really getting a good experience application. Well, all these devices run 90% on application. So if you're not getting a good app experience, that's the main core experience you have with your smartphone is the app performance. And if you can't nail down how these people are updating their apps to what software, you're not going to be able to ever have a good experience.
I want to love them. The screen is just unbelievable. Like it's quick. There's so many good things, but it's like that now. If you have disposable income to the point where you can get that, and then 6 months from now say, meh, I'll just swap my SIM around and into the latest device, then sure, that makes a ton of sense. But I mean, there's so many things that are just inexcusable to me, as far as, like, I have a Gear S3. I pop between that and Android Wear just on a regular basis. And the second that Pi hit, they all stopped working. Like Gear S3 stopped working. It took them weeks to update the app to the point where it kind of works now. And that just blows me away, as far as, like, it's just unbelievable that it's.
I mean, they're the largest distributor of Android devices, in the world, right? Out of Android market share, and you can't do a software update, right?
Is it purely because of the experience, Samsung experience, or is it's I know it's carrier related, so they can update it to or add and subtract what they need. Is that the issue?
It's, every version of Android that comes out, there's like the first like beta of it, and then it turns into public beta, and they start adding these APIs in so that developers can get their app ready for, to hook into these new APIs. That process started, 5 months ago. So like even the 4th beta, I think, is where like they started to get near final APIs. So at that point, some of your big manufacturers and some of your big players at that point should have had a pretty solid idea of what it was going to look like, as far as being able to make sure that their app is compatible. And in some cases, like, you've got an app that is hardware that is reliant on an app. Like the Gear Watch doesn't work without the app in the same manner that Wear OS, that the Android Wear watches don't work without the Wear OS companion app, or Apple for that matter, like the Apple Watch app. Like that app is like the key to getting the hardware to work. So when you sold a whole bunch of hardware, and then you have it's software dependent, and that software isn't ready, like, that's just like, I mean, everybody's watch stopped working. Reddit like exploded that day of people like, what the heck is wrong? And it was just, you get nerds like me that are going through trying to find out what combination of factory reset, what combination of like crazy things that I can do will make my watch work again. And turns out nothing. Samsung, waiting for Samsung to update it was the answer to that. I mean, it was just, and that just blows my mind, because it's not the first time that happened. Going from Android version 7 to Android 8 was a very similar experience. And it took them months to get it back to working again, unless you had a Samsung device. But that's not how they sell that. They don't sell that device that's just to specifically work with Samsung devices. They sell that Gear device to work with everything, like whether you have an iPhone, whether you have whatever phone you have. So in that instance, I would have expected, like, I understand when Apple breaks it, because Apple does it on purpose. It's like a spite thing that happens when iOS updates. Like,
that's a fact. It's not like an opinion. That's a fact.
They're definitely not I mean, there's been tons of iOS updates where the watch would break and then they'd have to fix it again. And Google's kind of onto them now with Wear OS on Apple. Like they kind of got it so that Apple can't do a whole lot to stop them. But your actual like home base Android, the fact that the day that update came out that everything stopped working was just mind blowing.
Deep breaths, Eddie. Deep
that's
breaths.
That's what worries me. Like that's what worries me. That's what overshadows the beautiful screen, the crazy good battery. For all intents and purposes, a really strong, competitor as far as something that they offer, something that no one else does, as far as just a very aesthetically pleasing.
It's pretty.
That display is just outrageous, and they always have been. Every year, it's the same story. Samsung's display wins like all these. They make the best displays. There's no question about it.
The iPhone 10 display.
Yeah, they did. Now they're sourcing from another manufacturer. Yeah. Now it looks like LG is providing them with their new panels.
Oh God. So my question at the end of the day is not you, Eddie, not me, not Brian. Does the average person care enough about the fact that, granted, they're doing an annual upgrade option with these Galaxy devices the same way they do with iPhones? Does the average person care enough about Android Pie for them to not want to buy this phone, Galaxy S9, S9 Plus? So I mean,
don't care at all. They don't care.
Go ahead.
It's the average, like. That's when we talk, it's us talking. Whenever, if you got, you approach three random people on the street, I would have a hard time believing that any one person would be anywhere near their purchasing decision at all. Like that would be the last thing on the list, as far as like, what is the last thing that you care about when it comes to upgrading your device? And it's going to be operating system.
Yeah, but I mean, part of me thinks that if you're buying $1,000 Note 9, that may come into it. Device payment makes them.
That most people, say we did that one in what did you say? 3 people? If you asked one of 3 people,
if you just pick 3 people,
I bet you, out of 3 random people that you picked out the street, they couldn't tell you what version of software they're running on their phone.
I would be willing to bet that there's a software update waiting that they refuse to do.
Yes, that's correct. No, you're right.
Like, I don't want to do that because it's going to change my phone, and I absolutely don't want it to be different. So there's been a pending install of an update for
telling me it's there. Yeah. I don't.
How do I make this?
I keep pushing it away, and it won't go away. So I would bet that all 3 of those people, that's the scenario. Like I don't, unless you get burnt by an update at one point. You don't typically do them. Getting burned by an update is like when apps physically tell you that they are unable to install the latest version because you are no longer you can't use this app because of the age of your operating system.
You're still running ICS.
Yeah. It's more of an iOS
translation.
That's more of an iOS problem because iOS seems to the operating system seems to transcend across many, versions. Like iPhone 5s and 6s are still getting updates, and that tends to be something you see a lot with iOS, whereas Android not so much, as far as the operating system typically doesn't dictate. Usually when you see an app now in the store, it says you have to be on like Android 4.3 or above, or 4.4 and above, and holy crap, that's a really long time ago.
Even just from, I've been taking classes in app development, like Android Studio, which is the software you use for it anyway, that runs back, I'm trying to think, because the version that I tend to build from is compatible with like 99% of Android devices, and it's generally 4.1 and up.
Your early 4s are your early KitKat is where.
Yeah.
See, I'm just trying to speak for the average guy at this point, because you're gonna have. I personally believe you're gonna have the Samsung squad the same way you're gonna have an Apple squad. At this point, it might not be the same size squad, if you will, but there's ride or dies on both sides, regardless. So when people are talking all kinds of smack on this Note 9, it's not a big enough upgrade. It's too expensive. You don't have enough things to warrant it. It's bright and shiny, but it's not worth it. People are going at these people hard, saying this is the best that Samsung has. This is a great phone. Blah blah blah.
They did it on stage. They said it on stage. Like, he literally got up and said, "Hey man, this is tough. It's hard to come up here every year and come up with a brand new thing." And I would argue that they probably try harder than most. Apple for sure. I can look at an 8 and a 6, like 4 generations of Apple phone, and unless you really deal with them all the time, the average person couldn't even tell you the difference between them. Like, they nearly the same size, almost to the millimeter. And I mean, it was probably the most heartfelt moment of that whole Unpacked event, was the fact that he's like wiping the sweat off his brow, saying, listen, this is not easy at all.
I think at one point he literally, the one guy said, "You can clap now." Like that's how rough that got. Yeah. And I think you're right, Eddie, in the fact that they pushed the limits with trying to innovate and add and change. I think that actually pushes Apple. I mean, that's probably why we have an iPhone 10 that looks like it does now. When you're talking edge to edge, you're talking. I'm not going to talk about the notch, but like with what I have in my hand in this iPhone 10, I think you're probably looking at a hefty portion of that being Samsung to blame or to thank for that, because they're pushing the envelope right now.
100%. I believe that under the right circumstances, that they don't have Apple. They want to be Apple, as far as they want to have smart home. They want to have this one cohesive unit
ecosystem.
Right. And they don't. And I think that Apple is the only one that can, at this point in time, that can get away with that. I mean, they came out with they came out with a speaker, but if that speaker, they got on stage and said, "You can't connect Bluetooth to this. You can only connect a Samsung device to this," there would have been outrage like no other. But Apple can do the same thing with the HomePod and say, "Yeah, there's no Bluetooth here. You either have an Apple phone or you don't hear anything."
And then they lied about it. They didn't lie about it. They said that it was capable to pair in stereo mode, and it wasn't until a software update.
Right, until a software update. Yeah. But Google does that. That's not. I mean, and again, like you say, the general consumer, the average person does not watch keynotes typically, or developer conferences like that, typically just out of morbid curiosity sometimes. But for the most part, what people would have taken out of that Unpacked event is the top reasons. Like the bottom, we talked about the bottom reasons being software updates. Top reasons are going to be battery life, and regardless of whether it actually does outperform other devices in terms of battery, if people hear those numbers, like for the longest time, it was how many megapixels is this camera? It didn't matter what the sensor was. It just, the number is what mattered. There was a Nokia 43 megapixel camera at one point in time, and people were like, "Oh, that's just amazing." Whereas the iPhone's, measly little 12 megapixel shooter just completely destroyed it. And it was just, people were going to hear just giant battery. And I mean, that's a big reason that people buy phones is battery life and camera.
I would agree. I mean, you're crushing the Note. Always crushed the spec lists. I mean, it's always been kind of that sort of thing. That 4,000 milliamp battery is going to give you a day's worth of use. You're not getting 2 days of battery life out of that. I don't care what they say.
Not with that display, no way.
And they send it out by default halfway down the resolution chart. Like, it's literally set at like halfway to full. As far as quad HD, it's like regular just full HD whenever you get it out of the box. So they're hoping, me assuming they're hoping you don't change this functionality or these features or these settings to where your battery life suffers for it. I don't. Screen brightness, Eddie knows this conversation with me. My screen brightness is halfway down. I like my battery life to last all day. If you have a quad HD display, it's kind of tough to not either have it at quad HD or at least have your screen to a point where it burns your retinas when you're in bed at night. So I get it.
I want to be the first person to burn my display in, so I make sure that it's 100% and left on.
You're right.
Timeout is 2 minutes. Like, I want buttons burned into the bottom, and I don't feel like I use my phone unless I burn them, unless it's my brand.
That's my Pixel right now. It's random. But if we're going to close out this conversation, I think that it's my be all end all to the Note 9 is that it's the only phone worth $1,000 right now with features, functionality, regardless of how it ages, software wise, hardware wise. I think it's probably the only one you're going to see worth the $1,000 hardware and functionality wise. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the updates that they made because they're starting to listen to what the consumer is saying with the fingerprint scanner, and some other things that battery to actually make changes based on what they hear. So I'm down with that, and I'm down with it being, like Brian said, it's not as bad as we thought it could be price wise. So I mean, if you guys have final thoughts, I'm going to close that up, because we can go for a while on that.
No, I think that's about all. I think you summarized that well.
Thank you.
Hardware wise, yeah, I would say it's worth $1,000. Software wise, I don't know. If I'm spending $1,000, I want to see what the Pixel 3 is.
And Eddie's not allowed to talk anymore. If we're going to stay on the software bit, Android Pie is solid now and released. I think the Pixels last year's, this year's, and the Essential phone that he referenced earlier all had it day one. I have my Pixel XL OG on Pi. It is, and I was telling Brian before we got on, it is significantly snappier than it was prior. It had, I haven't checked to see, because there was some issues with fast charging after the Pi update, which I haven't actually paid attention to see if it did or didn't, because Google's supposed to fix that with a software update. But significantly quicker software experience on Pi on the XL from last year, or almost 2 years at this point, than what I had before. I don't have the swipe functionality, the app switcher stuff on. I did not turn that on. Although I probably should, if I'm going to because they're going to push that on us later on. I would imagine that's going to be the stock way to navigate these Pixel devices. But overall, like boot up time, just fluidity of the system, it's night and day from what it was prior.
Yep, you said it all. I don't know.
Winner. I got two subjects in a row. I'm just killing it.
So yeah, that's, I mean, on the 2XL, I was running the betas anyway, but once I switched, the gesture navigation, I think, is a little odd sometimes, and you can toggle it on and off, which I think is a positive thing, but it's not bad.
Do you think
the battery life on it, I think it's about the same as what I was getting before. It's hard to say. I don't know. I mean, it was good before. It's still good now. It didn't go down. I would have noticed that.
I get better battery life. I get worse reading of battery life. Like, the percentages that I have never feel like they're the real battery percentage. Like, I'm almost to the point where I'm ready I've turned it on. I've always wanted to know for years. Ever since like the very early Androids, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but the original, like the earliest Androids, like Motorola, the battery percentage went in tens. Like, there was no 92. It was like 100, 90, 80, all the way down to, then it went from 20 to 15 to 10 to 5 to, like, there was 10% increments in there. And I scoured the App Store for an app that would show me like the 1% so that I could see. But now there's like no rhyme or reason. I'll unplug it and it'll drop from 100 to like 96 within 5 minutes, and then it won't drop again for 30 minutes. Like, it's just such a bizarre way of reading. And I have two Pixel XL devices that now we're both on Pi, and I have the similar experience on both. So it's not the age of the battery. One of them is almost a year old. One of them's 2.5 months old, 3 months old maybe, and they're getting a very similar. The percentages read weird, like to the point where I'm just ready to shut it off now. Like it lasts. I don't have any problem with it lasting. It's just that I can't obsess over percentages. Like I can't. There's no correlation between what I'm doing and what percentage it's giving me at the time. It's
almost
just
not able to trust it.
Yeah, like I could have 26% and that'll last me. That from 26 to 0 seems to last forever, and from 100 to like 74 is a quarter of that time. So it's just a bizarre.
I would agree. I've had devices that almost new, which is probably in that 2.5 month range that you were talking about, that literally went from 100 to 80 faster than anything, and then from 80 to 0 was like a day and a half. Yeah. So it was like, is that just how the battery functions as far as how it's gonna I don't want to call it deteriorate, but be used. I guess my question is, I know that the big push with these versions of Android is the whatever they want to call it, where they're telling you your device usage as far as like how long you're spending on your phone per application, stuff like that. So is it
the beta?
There's digital well-being, and then there's adaptive battery and digital well-being are like the two big features for usage.
So what I'm thinking,
well-being on for a while, like right after it came up, after I got the update, signed up for the beta for that, got put into it, put it on my phone, and I didn't really care. I mean, it had, you already have like the night mode feature that you can build in that'll turn, yellow your screen later at night. And I have mine set with sunrise and sunset. This let you turn your screen black and white at night. So yeah,
it can do both. It can do first. You can set those are two different settings.
Yeah,
like you can have it switch to like the night light mode, which takes the blue tinge away from the screen at one time, and then like that's like your quote unquote night mode, where it's supposed to make it so you're not gonna the blue light is supposed to keep you from sleeping. So if you normally start to go to bed at like 10 o'clock, but you don't actually go to sleep until like midnight, you can set it so that at 10 o'clock it changes into night mode, so your eyes are not getting bombarded with the blue light. And then after midnight you can have it turn to grayscale, so it turns like super ugly, and it's like you don't want to use it because everything sucks. You're just like you really can't. I mean, you don't want to look at pictures. You don't want to, I mean, other than legitimately like paying bills, it's the only thing that doesn't suck in black and white. If you try to use your phone.
I think it still sucks paying bills in black and white.
But yeah, I mean, that was really the only thing that I noticed with it. You can restrict the amount of time that you use individual apps for, so I could see for someone who feels like they are addicted to their phone or is addicted to their phone, or for parents that want to limit their child's usage of their phone, there's a benefit there for sure. I mean, like that's a definite selling point, but if you don't fall under any of those categories and it happens to be 10:35 at night and that black and white screen turns on at 10:30, you're like in the middle of doing something, and then
it doesn't. When they did the demo, it was like this gradual shift. Whenever it, like they were showing the demo, and it said it like gradually lost the color and then turned black and white. I when I first tried it, it didn't gradually. It was just like bang. It went from full color to no color within a millisecond, and then you're like,
I was in Florida uploading photos when that happened, and I was like, what happened? Did I hit the wrong filter on Instagram? Oh, it's the digital well-being telling me I'm awake too late.
It's basically saying get off your phone, you're addicted. Right. I thought maybe that would have an issue, that would have an impact on the battery life in some form or fashion with this new software. That was the one thing that I was trying to put two and two together that said, okay, this is involving how much you're using your device, so maybe it's affecting the battery life aspect. I don't use my Pixel XL as a daily. So I mean, it's on Wi-Fi at home, so I don't have a good idea of what the daily is like. But that was the only two things that I could put together that made sense as far as affecting it.
The adaptive battery feature is designed for that specific purpose, and the digital well-being isn't so much for battery as it is for you to just be more aware of how much you use your phone. I mean, it breaks it down to like a pie chart, and it shows you, this is how many times you've opened your phone and unlocked it. This is how many, minutes you've been on it. And this is the percentage of time you've spent on each app.
How many notifications you get. That was
how many notifications?
Actually, my ticker was at 248 one day. And I realized it was Gmail that was just lighting me up.
Yeah. Well, you think about Eddie's phone. So Eddie's phone is alerted every time the Nest goes off.
Right.
So he would crush the hell out of that. Like I could.
I don't have. It's not too bad.
Don't lie. Don't lie.
I don't know if it's gonna. So that's my like little pie chart, and then that's the
265.
We could see it if Brian would stop talking.
So 265. But what I notice it doesn't do is it doesn't take into account usage that happens off the phone. So like this. Yeah. If I interact with this and send messages and do things on the watch, it doesn't have any impact on, because that reduces the number of unlocks. The only number that doesn't affect is the notification number, because it goes to both. But I spent an extra 45 minutes messaging and doing things from the watch that isn't accounted for on the actual phone itself.
That's fair. And leave it to Eddie to circumvent the system.
105. I don't know if you can see that one. There it is.
Oh, there you go.
I haven't been on my phone a whole lot today with all the yard work I did today.
Good job. So that kind of lends itself to, if Eddie's talking about we're not trying to talk about your yard work. So that kind of lends itself to the Pixel Watch stuff. I mean, we talked last time we were together about Pixel 3 leaks and just stuff we were talking about. I think we're starting to hear a little bit more about like little stuff about a Pixel Watch. I know Brian was talking about it a little bit. What'd you run into online? Have you heard anything? I know you're going to give them your money real hardcore for this thing. So
yeah, I've been waiting to get a new smartwatch, so I'm pretty excited about it. So right now, the rumor is potentially an October 1st launch for them as well, alongside Pixel devices. So that might, maybe we can segue that a little bit. But 3 models, because there's 3 different code names out there for them, and LTE connectivity, which is very exciting. So, I mean, I haven't gotten a new smartwatch since the Moto 360, like the original one. Because that, I mean, lasted forever.
Wow. Good judging.
I had a Gear S2 Fit for a while as well. And then I've just kind of been hanging out waiting because I don't like the way that Gear watches interface with non-Samsung phones. So
I would agree.
Like 4 different apps. So the reason that the word on the street is October 1st is that's when Google's new Wear OS development policies go into effect. So support for different screen sizes, and then a bunch of other different things go into effect that day. So code names, though, are Ling, Triton, and Sardine. So who knows what that means.
Love it.
Yeah.
I told Brian before we got on here, I was like, people are going to expect this thing to be ugly as hell. Like, it's going to have a notch. It's
a notch and a flat tire.
And a flat tire, yes. The flat tire being the line across the bottom of the Moto 360, which, like the notch, I had 0 issue with after having it for like a week. So that's not an issue. I don't know what to expect. I've had good experiences with Wear OS now, or Android Wear when I had it. I mean, it is what it is. I think it'll probably work extremely well with the Pixel phones, granted. I mean, most of the Gear watches, or not Gear watches, but the Wear OS watches, which was the Moto 360 and the Moto 360 second gen, worked a ton better notification-wise, speed-wise, and accuracy-wise with the Android Messages app, rather than, say, the Samsung app. stock Messenger or anything else that I was using. So I did notice a benefit there. So I feel like it's going to work a lot better with these Pixels. But
Qualcomm's wearable event is on the 10th of September. So that's where they're going to show the new chipset. I don't know that we'll see. I think Google's going to hold their hand back until, like you said, like the beginning of October to show the actual watch itself. But we'll at least see the core technology, because you've got the Qualcomm event on the 10th, and then Google's going to be showing off their new Coach app, which is like they're going to be doing something like Apple does, where it's really focused on fitness and it's really focused on being able to predict like arrhythmias and things like that. Like they're going to start to get crazy with it, like as far as feature wise. But I would bet we'll start seeing crazy leaks right after the 10th, right after that chipset drops. I think that it's going to be like a floodgate opening up for these watches.
I think the timeline works out really well. I think it's because did I hear the 4th? October 4th?
The 4th is the day that they released the last two. So the Pixel 2 XL was the 4th of last year, and the Pixel 1 was the 4th prior to that. So the October 4th was the day that they did it 2 years in a row so far. So I don't know if that's the same as this year or not.
I mean, I would be fine with that. I really want to see this regular Pixel 3, like I was stating earlier, with a smaller form factor, which is basically a 2XL and a smaller chassis, which I think will be kind of cool to see. So just want to let Brian go fangirl on the watch for a second so he could feel better about himself. We saw a Pixel 3.
Thank you, Mark.
We saw a Pixel 3 XL in the wild. I saw a couple of pictures of someone using it on like a trolley or something. And from everything I saw, it basically looked like, I mean, they're leaking the hell out of their own stuff right now.
There's no unless it's the greatest troll in history. That's the phone. I mean, that's what we're gonna see. Come October is gonna be that monster notch.
They literally just open the gates to Google's headquarters and just send people out with this stuff and be like,
they're supposed to have
see you.
They're supposed to have like a case on it that is a very nondescript, ugly, boxy thing. This person did not. But I mean, at this point, it's just, there's like nothing secret about it anymore. Like the specs are out, the benchmarks have hit. It's, it's an 845 or an 845, 4 gigs of RAM.
Which people are upset about.
I don't understand why. I don't understand why.
It's like
mine has 6.
And so does a OnePlus 6.
If you look at like what they're failing to talk about is that the RAM modules, those other, like to have 6 or 8 requires more power. So the more RAM you have in theory, the worse battery life. However, software on those devices doesn't utilize that. It completely blocks it off. So like in everyday usage, the phone is using as little of it as it can to reduce power consumption, and it only gets power to that RAM if under very specific circumstances. So in almost every 6 and 8 gigabyte RAM version of phone that they tested, 90% of the time it ran with less than that, because it was conserving power based on just giving those modules less power. Can
you give me an example of what type of task would require more than?
I'd imagine like a specific game of some sort, like Fortnite. I'm assuming. It's not
to be able to say that we have 6 gigs of RAM in this device.
It absolutely is. Like if you do this, like even if they did, well, I mean, in theory, shame on them, because from a journalist standpoint, that should be one of the first things they discuss, but it doesn't make as good of a headline as, Pixel has 4 gigs of RAM, is going to be garbage or whatever it is. Like that's a way better clickable headline than, hey, Pixel has 4 gigs of RAM, which is what most other phones use anyway. Like it doesn't sound as good as I mean, Apple knew this a long time ago. Their top of the line iPhone has 3 gigs.
Well, that's the
Like,
same. Is it the same conversation as the 4,000 milliamp battery? We can say it out loud, and people want to hear that. So, what do people want to hear RAM-wise? They want to hear 6 or 8 gigs of RAM.
Right. Absolutely. It's absolutely that. Unless something changes dramatically in as far as how Android works, and the manufacturer of the actual operating system is also making the phone. So in no world can I imagine that there's gonna be some change anywhere in the near future that is going to allow that extra RAM to be used on a more consistent basis, because the person making the phone is also.
I also think that, yeah, not to cut you off, but I also think that people are upset because I think they're now paying a premium for these Pixel devices and only getting 4 gigs of RAM. So they feel like they're being slighted in that aspect. That's kind of, maybe it's tough for them to swallow that they're paying almost $1,000 for a device that doesn't have some of the specifications of a Note 9 or a OnePlus 6.
If that's if that's the cost of it, then sure. If it still falls around that $700-800 price point, I mean, phones in general are I think overpriced as far as like what you get. I think that really the iPhone 10 is the only one that has some justification from a price standpoint based on the components that go into it. But
I just said the only phone that is worth $999 is the Note 9.
Yeah.
You just destroyed my argument.
That you can physically walk out to the store and buy
fair
right
enough.
now.
Fair enough. I'll give you that.
I wasn't counting. Like I'm talking about like prior devices. Like if I look at an iPhone 8, I absolutely don't believe that it's worth that amount of money with the resolution on the display, all the way down to the internal components. Like it's not worth that amount, but people are willing to pay that amount. And Google's doing the same thing. I appreciate the move from Nexus to Pixel, and I appreciate the bump in materials. The Pixel phones are significantly better device. Each year it got, better. I go back to the plastic Nexus 5, and then Nexus 6 was a little better. Nexus 6P was a little like the choice materials are better. So I understand paying more for those more premium materials, but now with the release schedule, the release cycle is
annual.
Is annual, and it doesn't coincide with like the latest generation of processor. Like that seems to go into the spring releases, like the S10 or whatever Samsung calls it is going to get the new chipset. As far as like right now, we're a few months away from a chipset, like a brand new high power chipset, but we're getting what's effectively last spring's chipset in there, and you're still charging $850. Like I feel like I'll buy a Pixel, and I will absolutely have one. It shouldn't be as much as it is. Like as far as like last year's Pixel should have been maybe $150 cheaper in both regard. Like the XL should have landed in the $600 price point, and the standard one should have landed in like the $450 to $500 price point. It's just they're charging a money that
they can because of the market.
Right.
But I agree. And if I'm going to give Samsung credit for taking customer feedback, Google is the same. I mean, every iteration of the Pixel to this point was updated at least a little bit to what kind of feedback they had gotten from owners and from people online. So, I mean, they've made similar strides to better their product based on the feedback they've got.
They didn't listen to anybody about the notch, though.
They didn't. No, it's a cool thing to do. I mean, we're going to forget about it. If you're going to have that phone, Eddie, you're not going to worry about it a weekend. You're not going to care about it. And
no, it's like we were talking about notifications earlier. Like I've noticed now that once you get so many notifications on P, you can always see what they are at the top, but once you get past so many, they turn into these dots where they're just indistinguishable from anything, and that's not useful to me at all in any way, shape, or form. That is like the least useful thing, is just a series of dots across the top. I don't know whether, I mean, the status bar on the Pixels appears to be double wide, so if they're going to stack them as far as like you get like a row of 4, and then you get like another row of 4 below that once you get to a certain point. And it's only showing like that on my XL2 because it doesn't have a double wide status bar. But if that's the case, if it just cuts it off like it's doing, that notch better do something amazing, because otherwise it's just we
went over it before. It has a somewhat angry looking face in it.
So right after those notifications, if you look, it turns into a dot.
And that's not even a lot of notifications.
No, it's absolutely not. Like if you have like a message, a email, and anything else, like one other thing, like that's it. You got just going to be dot across the display, and it's just super not useful at all.
If you use Facebook Messenger, you're guaranteed to have 2, because you have one that tells you have a chat bubble open, and then you have one for each unread message. So there's 2 right there.
Oh, you're burnt.
Right, and then you just need one other thing.
After allotment, heaven forbid you get an email.
Heaven forbid you have Pokemon Go open and you're hunting for all those things, because that's what Brian does on his vacation.
Yeah, it was a good time.
So I kind of probably wanted to interject because Eddie was going to go for a minute on the notch, which he'll have and proudly display. It doesn't matter. I don't want to hear him.
He's going to put tape over it. It's not going to help, but he's going to put tape over it.
It's smiling at you, or whatever goofy face that it looks like, and it's one of those things. They're giving that name to the back of the camera module of the Note 9, where it's like a certain emoji. It fits like that sideways smile emoji, which I thought was kind of funny. I think it was Droid Life that did that. But I know I started the Pixel stuff. I'm sorry, we got on a rant. The other thing that I thought was kind of cool, and we've got into a nice little weekly conversation about Google Homes and how you can get one by taking a shower every day. But like me and Brian were talking about the Google Home Room Aware, if you know what I'm talking about, Eddie. Where it will, if you have a home in a certain room and it's set up in the Home app correctly, that if you're in my bedroom with a Google Home there and Philip's Hue and I say turn the lights off, it knows it's in the bedroom and only turns the bedroom lights off, and kitchen, living room, whatever. That functionality to me is epic. I kind of like that aspect, because now, like when I have people want to like say shut the lights off, they say that, and then my entire house goes dark, and it's real creepy. Like it's not fun at all. So I think that's fully out there to be had. I don't know if you've messed with it, Eddie.
It is. It's taking me getting used to, because I'm used to just saying turn off the lights, and then they all turn out. Now I say turn on the lights, and it just turns on like where I'm sitting, and it doesn't always help. And Mary's taken some time to get used to it, because she's also used to saying turn on the lights and then everything comes on.
Is there a be all end all command for the house?
You can say turn now you have to say turn off all the lights, or turn on all. You have to have the word all in there somewhere, or have a routine where you just say good morning, and then it sequentially turns on whatever you set up your routine with. It's just a getting used to thing, and I'm just accustomed to saying that. Typically when we turn on lights, I always mean all. And when I wanted specific lights, I would just be accustomed to saying the room. So it's just unlearning that, because now I can just say turn on the living room, turn on the bedroom, turn on the kitchen, turn on, and they do. Now you don't have to do that anymore. So it's just, for me, I've been so used to it. But for like someone who's not, like you were saying, for a guest that comes over, they're not going to turn your whole house lights off anymore. They're just going to, it's going to do what they expect. And it's going to, you flip the switch in the room you're standing in with the expectation that those are the lights that come on. That switch isn't going to turn off, everything in the house. So it makes sense for everyone. It's just, I'm not accustomed to it yet. And it's just, it's causes me to say like 4 extra commands that I would not have normally said.
That's fine. I understand. I haven't messed with it. I made sure when I heard about the feature that I had all of the homes in the correct rooms so that it would be an easy transition. I haven't messed with it. I still physically say the room when I say turn the lights on or off or whatever percentage. I do the percentage of dimming and stuff like that a ton, but I still say the room. So maybe I just haven't adjusted what I'm saying yet. But I thought it was kind of cool. It was something, it's the next step. So we're getting there. It's just a matter of getting used to it. But I thought it was something cool. And we've talked about that every week to this point. So there's always something with it. I feel like there's a release every week for a new feature or functionality to the Google Home app and the Google Home. So I enjoyed that. So there's obviously has to be an Apple/iPhone segment because that's how the world works. So what I've seen the last week was these dummies showing up online with a lot of different YouTubers going over, like just holding them in their hands, seeing the differences, knowing that the budget version is supposed to have an LCD screen and a single camera instead of the dual camera. I don't really have a ton to really say about it. I mean, the iPhone 10 Plus is going to be smaller footprint wise than the 8 Plus, but still have a bigger display. So I think that's kind of exciting. Some new colors. I think they may they're talking about a gold for some of the premium ones. And then a bunch of colors like the 5C that we talked about, I think last week or the week before, for the budget one.
As long as it's not that cheap plastic.
Yeah, I think they all have to be glass at this point because they're all in on wireless charging. But I did hear, I think it was MKBHD that talked about the fact that there was a rumor that the budget model was going to have Face ID version 1, where the new updated version of the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 10 Plus were going to have version 2. With whatever features and functionality they add to it, which would be kind of crappy to see. Not super happy with something like that, but there's really not a ton going on in that aspect right now. I just keep seeing those dummies pop up, and we're to the point right now where, just like the Note, we kind of know what these phones are going to be next month. We're dealing with next month at this point. We know what's going to show up at Cupertino on stage. It'll be revolutionary. We understand that.
Magical, powered by unicorn blood.
As long as it's not unapologetically plastic. Solve it.
I have a hard time believing that budget could be plastic. I mean, they're all about this wireless charging thing. I know. I heard that they're not going to put. I heard that. I heard that they're not going to put the dongle for the headphone jack in there though, which may piss some people off. I can't find mine. The box is right here. I can't find my dongle, so I don't know what my life's like right now without my dongle. But
not living that dongle life.
I can't let it's somewhere. I asked Eddie for a dongle. He told me no. But I did. I asked him for a dongle. But I mean, it's normal stuff. It's like the Pixel stuff. Like we literally know what this is. We've seen pictures of it on a trolley somewhere. The Note was literally, like, we said it on our show 2 weeks ago or whatever, that like it's going to be, hey, put this phone on a shelf and take a picture with your pen 10 feet away. And what the hell happened? So, I mean, this is the same conversation. We're going to talk about the iPhone 2018 and we're going to watch it happen in a month. And just is what it is. That's the life we live.
I don't think there's going to be any real surprises there either. It's another iPhone.
Power?
Yeah, that's a long time coming.
Jesus. But I mean, we're gonna see what updated AirPods, I think.
Yeah.
With
Updated AirPods.
that fast battery pack built in. I mean, that's pretty cool.
They're gonna put the.
I agree with that.
Are they gonna put the fast charger in the box?
I would imagine that they would almost have to. I mean, you know what though? It's hard to say. Apple's bizarre when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like they
got beat up for it.
Even their iPads, like there's a faster brick that you have to purchase in order to do that. But to put the fast charger in there would require them to have USB-C on one side and Lightning on the other. And then in that case, there'd almost certainly have to be another dongle to move from USB-C to USB-A, because then you're banking on the fact that if you're still using iTunes to plug into, the cord that comes in the box doesn't work unless you're using one of the new Macs, or a higher end Windows PC, because for the most part you still have legacy USB ports on there. So that's a consideration. That's a whole consideration also. But if they're going to do fast charging, they're going to have a C on one end. And word on the street is that the Lightning port is not long for this world. And they will be C also, which would be wonderful for us. But like the average person is going to say, oh, Apple's just doing it again, even though they're actually doing a good thing. So I don't know. It's really hard to say what they're going to do. Unless they sell a separate, a separate cable that's USB regular to.
Yeah. I totally forgot about the whole syncing over iTunes stuff and backing up with that. I totally forgot about that. And there's a very, very small amount of the average user that's crushing that USB Type-C on their laptops right now.
Right.
I mean, it's not super like brand new that Type-C is a thing on laptops, unless you have 16, 17, and now 18 MacBooks. But I mean,
you're starting to get like less expensive models have USB-C in it. But prior to this, you had to buy a device of some substantial cost in order for it to have a USB-C in it.
And surprise, MacBooks have substantial cost.
Right. And so MacBooks have had, and some of them only have that port. That's the only port that's on there.
Right.
Like there is no other way to go. But, at first I thought, well, who the heck still syncs their phone to iTunes? And then I found out that a lot of people do. I was kind of shocked. I was like, who doesn't use iCloud? But like no one, because everybody's passed their 5 gigabytes and everybody refuses to pay 99 cents a month. And it just blew my mind, but it's true. So I don't know. It's just, that's the only mystery to me is what they're going to do with the cord. Like, I feel like I got a pretty good grasp on what the phone is.
It's like totally ass backwards. It's like, we know what the phone's going to be. What cord are they going to use?
What cord are they going to use?
It's 2018, everybody.
Yes. Like I said, we have to talk about it a little bit, just because, I mean, there's always something little that pops up with the Apple and the iPhones. I haven't heard anything other with Apple besides some of the stuff with like what else we're going to get with their announcement. But
the iPad.
Yeah, I saw some renders, to be honest, and I think we started to see that with some icons in the new iOS versions, where you saw like it's almost like bezel-less, which I think is kind of really cool. I think they're going to add.
It's going to be nice.
Yeah, I think they're going to. And I've always been an iPad user. I used Nexus tablets. I've used other tablets. I haven't had a better experience than the iPads that I've had. So it's a tough sell for me to do anything else. I know that they're talking about adding Apple Pencil functionality to the phones, which seems totally useless to me. It's like a S Pen on steroids, I guess, if you would want to go that route, but I don't see the functionality of that at all. But that was basically our touch base with Apple, just because we know stuff happens periodically. It's nothing super crazy. We kind of already know what this is going to be. But
you'll have like 2 weeks until, maybe a little less than 2 weeks, and we'll have a date for the announcement. And then you can pretty much figure it out from there. So it's usually right around Labor Day. Is the announcement, like, is the invites go out. So the invites usually go out like a week ahead of time. And then generally speaking, from the week ahead of time, you would have a week or two from there to the actual product release.
That's normal, which is fine. I know you'll be watching it, waiting to get those iPhones. But I mean, there's little stuff like I had read about that I think we wanted to touch base on, but until we get closer, I don't know that we're going to have a bunch to talk about until like we see more of the iPads and stuff like that. But The only other thing, there's only a couple things I'm going to give Eddie his Tesla minute here in a sec, but I was talking a little bit with you guys about the Motos, the Motorola's line, the Z. I know that this round they didn't have a force option with that unbreakable display and that plastic, like, dentable display, which tends to scratch easier than it does break. But their big claim to fame right now was the 5G Moto mod. They want to be first to market with a device that can function on the 5G network. I know that back in the day when the Moto Z was first a thing, they said they guaranteed 3 years worth of Moto mod compatibility. This is year 3. So there's no Z3 Force. Are we going to see this phone after, or are we going to see this line after this phone?
Nope, I don't believe so. I think this is it. This is I mean, if there was something in the pipeline, then there would have been something newer released. This release here is literally the phone that would have come out last year. Everything, the processor, literally every aspect of it is last year's device. I'm sure they held off to engineer it so that this could be the stepping stone to really launch the 5G stuff. But I would imagine that that's the end. I mean, you don't really see much in the way of mod support. It's not like they've been coming out with a bunch of stuff. There just isn't. I mean, it's batteries, a speaker or two, the same camera and the same projector. Nothing's been updated from there. I mean, I feel like if we were going to see mods, if we were going to see more of these devices, we would have seen more mods by now. And the ones that were supposed to come out, like the keyboard mod, never made it. So I would be surprised if there was another generation of device.
Which is sad. I mean, they're super cool. I love my Z Play. My wife really loves hers. The mods are really neat. Camera mod is great. The projector was always cool to show off.
I really did like that.
The speaker was really good too.
Projector mod was awesome.
The JBLs were banging for that phone. Hanging out on the deck, load music on your phone and play right out of the speaker. That was super easy to do. No pairing or anything. But yeah, I think this is it. 6-inch display on it, and that's it.
That was tough because
mod, like we were saying, it just feels really gimmicky.
Forced.
Like, how does that even work? What else does it do? Does it do anything else besides that? Is it a battery pack too? I didn't look at it a whole lot because
the battery for the battery for the modem, the battery for the 5G mod is only to power the X50 Qualcomm chip that's in it. And also it's only compatible with that phone. So that mod, even though it physically fits on the other ones prior to this, it does not work. Your older Motorola's will not get the 5G based on
I guess it kind of is a hardware limitation.
The way that it would work. Well, it's still up in the air of how the data is being transferred, whether it's being transferred through the pogo pins or, if they're real sketchy about details on how it works. What we do know is that that X50 modem is in there, and that 2000 milliamp hour battery is dedicated directly to the modem itself. And it's got that little piece on top that is going to pull it's going to work with the millimeter wave stuff. It's just that it's going to be of varying usefulness as far as millimeter wave is 20 in the 20s somewhere megahertz. Like, it just doesn't travel super duper far.
You get about it's also maybe a mile. Maybe.
Well, it's all maybe. Yeah, it has to be clear line of sight. There's like trees or even like fog, moisture in the air actually affects the signal as well. So it's going to be.
Don't use it in the shower.
Right. A steamy shower, hot shower, cold one, you're okay.
Get a cold shower, yeah. For whatever reason that may be.
So we think that's the last dying breath of Motorola.
In general, I saw
flagship phones.
Yeah, well, I saw a bunch of stuff about this Asian P30 Motorola.
that too.
It looks like a freaking iPhone. It's like unapologetically an iPhone with a Motorola logo on the back. Like they're getting crushed right now. And is it only in emerging markets?
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen it.
It's got that translucent purplish back like the Huawei did on like an iPhone. It's like this crazy mismatch of. I think that's the Motorola we'll see in the future. Like I think that the Moto Z line will go away.
Solid. Like the
that budget,
G6.
G4 Plus. I think it was G4. Are they G5 now?
They're on G6.
Oh, well, there you go.
So the G series, the X series, and there's some other letter now that is supposed to replace the Z line.
Well, they have an Android One phone too, I thought, but maybe that's just
it's not lettered. Yeah, and I don't know, it's a weird letter that everybody's like, oh, what a weird letter, and it's so bizarre. I don't remember, it's like a W or something. Like it's just like a really bizarre letter that they used. But that's like what everyone is expecting the Z line to turn into. Just it's going to be sans the mod. Like no.
I've been over it for a minute. I've been over it since the Moto X was out of their plans. After they got sold, after all the stuff got sold to Lenovo, I was over it. Like I don't have. I mean, their Z line, the Play, entry level, like Brian said a couple episodes ago, crushed battery life. Worked. The camera was decent enough for what, $400 or whatever it was. For a name that you recognize. So, I mean, that has a place, has a slot for people. I don't see how you can spend $700 to $800 on a Motorola at this point. For what? What are you getting out of a Motorola? I think the regular Z is still only less than $600.
They're super reasonably priced as far as like if you want to talk about devices where you get a lot of device for what you pay. I mean, that line is definitely one that should be considered as far as.
I think if we're talking about lesser specs in a phone, the software doesn't require it. Those would probably be a good example because they're using pretty close to stuff. They've always, for the last probably 4 years, have used pretty close to stock Android. So they weren't requiring anything crazy, which is why Brian and his family have had the experience they have had with their Motorola's. I just don't know that they have. They're bordering on BlackBerry spot right now, or they're just kind of hanging out. BlackBerry's releasing more phones than Motorola at this point. Then that's not even a joke. That's legit. Like that's what's happening right now. It's a little bit scary. I'm not gonna lie. So sad to say, RIP. Moto Z Force, because that's not a thing anymore. Can't tell me you want to break your phone. And I mean, I have to give it to you, Eddie. You get a Tesla minute every episode. I was kind of trying to trump you up a little bit because I'd seen an interview with Marquez Brownlee and Elon Musk, which I thought was really good. So a lot of good questions. You guys should check that out. It was really cool because we hear a lot about Elon, and then we see his tweets and stuff like that. He was super down to earth, super cool from everything I saw from the interview. But I mean, he talked a lot about different sort of stuff, business model wise, what their outlook is, what they're trying to do, whether it be Roadster or everyone's interested in the Model 3, and how are they going to get to $35,000 instead of what's the start now, 45 at this point.
50-ish is where you're starting, but 35 is supposed to be coming, but
and to start this, because I'm going to give you your minute here, 35,000 is apparently supposed to be doable because they just figured out a cheaper, lighter battery module of some sort. Like the battery technology was getting them to be able to make it closer or cheaper.
Yeah, they're redesigning the battery itself in order to hit, just the way that they manufacture things and the way that they're able to, they want to be able to scale that pack across new lines of devices. Like the Model Y is, probably less than a year from being unveiled, and it's going to be to market faster based on the fact that the battery packs are going to be interchangeable. You could literally it's like those little cars that you'd put the shell of the other car on top of it. They had the battery was in the base, the little 4-wheel drive. I forget what they were even called, but there was you put like a single AA battery there, and it was just the motor was in the base, and you just slapped a shell of like a monster truck.
So Eddie's older than all of us.
Yeah.
So this is an issue.
They were so awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Elon Musk just needs to stay off of Twitter for a while. He had like a just unbelievably disastrous 2 weeks since we last talked. From talking about going private, where at $420 a share, which drove the price way up as far as stock goes, and then caused a bunch of people betting against the company to lose money. So naturally they put an investigation in saying that he can't do that. He was artificially raising the numbers, and it caused him to do this weird like rant with like these two other singers. They were like, yeah, we were on his property, and he's doing like narcotics rings, and it was just unbelievable. Like I was blown away with the story as far as what the heck. It was like a narcotics ring, a waste disposal, and some other just bizarre thing. And then it just gets him going. Like he's just so passionate about the company itself that he gets on there and says like crazy bananas things. And it's just, he just needs to stop, just delete all his tweets, just get off of Twitter and just run the company, because it's just unbelievable. The week of news.
I think he said in that interview with Marquez that he was like, I don't know why he's like, people think I'm on Twitter too much. I have no idea why they would ever say that. Like, it was in jest. I thought it was funny.
Well, he had a very tearful interview that he did, right before that, where he broke down on camera and just started like crying, and he went through phases. Like he was like joking, then he was crying, then he was joking about crying, then he was like crying and depressed. Like so much so that like the investors, like all these stories came out of losing confidence in him. And it's just, I mean, what a bizarre 2 weeks that man's had, as far as he had. I don't even know the singer's name. I got to look it up, because it's going to drive me crazy.
I think that from what I got from that interview, cause I watched it sitting in my car. But I mean, he came off super, super down to earth, super likable, obviously. I think most people root for him and his goals and initiatives that he's trying to accomplish. Super, just overall easy. Like, he explained things easily as far as what they were trying to do, where they wanted to get to, how aggressively they wanted to get there. He just did a really good job at ingratiating himself to the people that kind of wanted to hear something from him that wasn't the hot mess from the 2 weeks prior. So maybe that was just an opportunity to do that. Versus
Azalea Banks is the singer that said that she was on his property, and that he went from like acid trip to acid trip, and that he was talking just meeting with Saudi Arabia investors to do some kind of crazy collaboration, and then he was running this drug ring. It was just super duper bizarre. And it's what's weird is that just he seems like a genuine CEO. Like, he seems like a genuine person, cares about the company, like feels like he wants to make a difference in the world. It's just like, I can imagine how it must feel to have everybody against you. Like, just think of it yourself. You're like, all right, I'm gonna make the world a better place. I'm gonna clean it up. Our children's children, they're gonna have a clean environment to live in. Like, I just want to do good things. And around every turn, everybody's like, you suck. And that's all they do is just beat you down. So he's got to be somewhat strong to be able to withstand. But man, he just had a bizarre. I mean, there's nothing really new happened with the vehicles itself. I almost feel like that Marquez Brownlee interview was strategically done.
It feels like it was to gain back some credibility.
Had he not had the last 2 weeks that he had, I don't know that interview would have occurred.
I think he was looking to try to get. I know that he's super in his camp, and I listen to a lot of what Marquez has to say about about Elon and wanting to have. He used to talk in his videos a lot about how much he wanted to interview him, and it was kind of crazy to me that it just happened. Like
Right. There was no,
yeah.
Like normally he telegraphs. Like normally Marquez will telegraph. He did an interview with one of the guys from Apple a while back.
Yes, he did. I remember that. He did Kobe Bryant. He was interviewed Kobe Bryant.
Was telegraphed significantly earlier, as far as he said, "Oh, I got a great thing coming up." He didn't give away what it was.
Mm-hmm.
He was just like, "I'm going to be talking with somebody directly from."
He's the guy with the gray hair. He has the gray wavy hair.
Federici.
Yes, yeah.
Federici. But it was telegraphed like way ahead of time. And this Elon Musk interview, there was like
that's like the golden the holy grail of interviews for him. I mean, at this point, it's a holy grail interview for a lot of people, but it was just like it just came out of nowhere for me. I was like, I was must see TV, must see YouTube viewing for me. Like, I obviously wanted to see what he had to say, but
I honestly hope they go private. I think that's the best thing. Dell did something similar back in the day. And I just I don't ever treat Tesla like a car company. I see them in the same light as I see Microsoft or Apple, or instead of Ford and GM. Like I don't see that company like an automobile company. I see it as a tech company, and I think that's probably the best thing that can happen, because all these external influences kind of go away, and he can just focus himself on making better things.
Yeah, makes sense. I knew that I'd seen them talk about, and I think Marquez asked a lot about how he plans to get that Model 3 closer to the $35,000 price range that they kind of promised or said that it was going to be at, with a lower range battery and all that fun stuff. But and I had heard about the cheaper battery modules and the things they're working on, just production wise, to get it to that point.
It's the downside to all this is the timing is now, unless the bill passes where they extend the federal tax credit.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing was that at this point now, if you were to take advantage of the tax credit, you would be in similar final price that you would if you waited. Like for those who buy a Model 3 a year from now, or let's say 16 months from now, they could have purchased one today with longer range, better specifications for about the same, because you're losing out on federal tax incentives and state incentives that that was the whole purpose of that, was that you would have a $35,000 car for like the mid to high 20s. And by the time this hits, that tax credit's going to be halved or quartered or gone. Like it's already triggered. The phase out's already been triggered. So he's going to have to do something else as far as being able to, the price point of the more expensive one now is brought down to that same $35,000 level because of the incentives. When those incentives go away, I wonder if it's actually going to be that, or if when this happens, he's going to say, "Hey, Model 3 is now $25,000. And we're going to reduce the price of our long range Model 3 to about the 35 or 40. Like he's just not going to, they're working on manufacturing so that they can compensate for the loss of the tax credit. So once that $7,500 to $15,000, depending on where you live, goes away, you'll be able to, he'll say, yeah, so tax credit's gone, but you know what? We're also going to drop the price of the Model 3, regular range battery from 35. You can now buy one for 25,000.
It ends up being closer to 35 anyways, after you change the color and whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Which makes sense. Whatever. I understand how this works. If you take 10 minutes to look at how this process works, you understand that if you do anything to the car, it ends up being 10. If you want anything worth anything, it just is. But
that's
it is. I get
any
it.
car.
I get it. And I wasn't, like I said, that wasn't a Tesla thing. That was more of a product upsell thing than anything. that was the majority of the list I had for episode 3. I wanted to usually give Eddie a chance to. I don't know if you're working on anything for your channel, video wise. I don't know what's going on with autopilot, or if you're going to mess with the Google Home stuff.
Autopilot is getting a substantial upgrade in 2 or 3 weeks. The things that are coming out in the meantime are more not specific to autopilot, but more just vehicles in general. My wife has been looking for a new vehicle, and I had an opportunity to sit in other vehicles that we normally would not have BMWs, things that are along the same line as far as the name goes, like a higher end more luxury based vehicle. And it's interesting to see the comparisons between what I sacrifice as far as interior wise. Like there really is like a Spartan interior where it's just very minimalistic, whereas you sit inside like one of the new BMWs, it's just like seats massage your back, and I'm not even kidding.
Champagne.
So during that, I did a lot of video stuff. So I'm putting together now, just in comparison, like you looking at vehicles around the same price points. In some cases, a hair cheaper, in some cases, a hair more. But it's interesting to see, the polish that goes into just the overall, like that last step of polish, where just whether it's the way that the vehicle turns on or the quality of the seats. Like it's interesting to see whenever I sit in it, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna treat this like a vehicle, and as we're shopping, I'm gonna look at this like with a completely clean slate every time. And then when you go back to Tesla itself, you're thinking, wow, there's a lot of stuff that these vehicle manufacturers that have been making, like BMW for 100 years now, have been making vehicles that you don't realize that is part of like that level of class. Like it's just the seats massage you. That was shocking. Like the little chairs in the mall that you put $1 or $5 into and massage your back. Like that's what happens when you drive. So.
But where can they? So you're working on those videos now. Where can someone find those videos?
So you can search my name, Eddie Daniels, right after the clarinet player.
One of these days I'm going to be more.
Is it still after the clarinet player?
I'm still after the clarinet player. He's got.
Can we get Eddie above the saxophone clarinet player?
I like of anything wrong with the clarinet. He seems like a nice enough guy. I just one of these days I'll be up there with him. we
gotta get these subscribers so we can get Eddie above the I'm gonna keep saying saxophone for some reason.
If you use my name with like technology, like tech or Tesla or anything in it, usually I pop up ahead of him. But if you just use the name itself, man, he's a beast on the clarinet. I'm gonna actually watch some of his videos so that I can see.
Like the hell out of it.
He posted a video from 2 months ago. It's got 10K views, so he's nailing it on the clarinet.
So yeah, please find Eddie Daniels. We'll just type technology after the fact, so you can find some stuff. I know he works on a lot of Google related stuff. The Tesla stuff's new because he's got a lot of stuff coming up with that. So find him. We'll get him past above the clarinet player in search. That'll be one of our major goals here, regardless of all the tech talk.
It's a stretch goal.
Yes, correct.
Stretch goal.
Brian, anything in conclusion? You messed with that. Talk about Twitter, because I know you started Twitter.
We did start our Twitter, Tech43 with the number 4 in the middle. So we'll be posting the link to all of our videos on there, and then any occasional interesting things that come out throughout the week or day, we'll post that as well. So
I'm excited about the Twitter stuff because there's all kinds of fun stuff on Twitter, including Elon Musk.
Mean people on Twitter. So
yeah, keyboard warriors will happen. But I think that's cool. So we're stepping up the game there. And basically just thanks. I mean, we took a couple weeks because we had some scheduling issues, but I'm glad we kind of got to reconvene. It's a little bit of a slow week as far as what we've went through. But I think, and Eddie will probably attest to this, we're going to have some busier weeks here coming up. beginning to middle of next month with Apple stuff and everything else. So I appreciate Eddie appreciates Brian appreciates watching this now, which you're probably not because I haven't put it public yet. But if you watch this later on, let us know too. I mean, I'm willing to throw these out public so we can get the chat going a little bit. So if you want to kind of see that, let us know about that too. But for Tech 4-3, my name is Mark. We have Eddie and Brian. We appreciate your time tonight, and hopefully we'll see you on episode 4. Have a good one.